Hello, everybody. It is I, Carlton Flowers with CZTV, the Carlton Zone. You're in my zone, www.carltonzone.com, and back for another chat to answer some questions that some of my white friends have asked concerning some of the racial issues that are going on with all of the social unrest and upheaval that has been happening since the George Floyd incident at the end of May. All right, now I've got three different questions, and to give you a little bit of background about the people who asked the questions, these are dear friends. One in specific who I won't mention her name, but she's a friend of mine for the last 20 years, and I would trust her with my life. And she's one of the most kind people on planet Earth. And so I know that she is asking out of sincerity. And when a person approaches me with tough questions, my attitude is you can ask me whatever you want, because I know that you're asking from a standpoint of sincerity and you want true insight and want my opinion to help you kind of unravel some of the things that just don't make sense. All right, so with that, we're going to jump right in to question number one of three. So, question number one, why isn't there any protesting over black on black crime? All right, so let's get into this one. I've got a few notes that I'm going to be reading here off of my screen, some points so I don't miss out anything, because I've done a lot of research and digging in to make sure I give a well-rounded answer on each one of these three questions. So, regarding the lack of protesting over black on black crime, and I think this question was specifically regarding the murder of David Dorn in Ferguson, which was a terrible, terrible incident. I watched the 15-minute video, and it was one of the most awful things I have seen in my life. It was just as bad, if not worse, as watching the George Floyd video. And it really pushed me almost to a depression. It took me several days to shake the image of what I saw during that video. And also the shooting of the black police officer in Dallas. And then, of course, the high rate of crimes and murder committed from black people on black people within some of the inner city communities around the United States. Okay, so after digging in and thinking about this, here's my insight. First of all, there is no racial conspiracy on blacks not speaking out about black on black crime. It's something that the media wants you to believe. And this is not just something that whites are not aware of. There are even people within the black community who don't know about what's really going on regarding protesting and demonstrating black on black crime. It's been heavy on my mind, because I thought after David Dorn was murdered, why aren't they going to do anything for this man who was viciously killed over a television set? It was really sad. And I thought to myself, there's probably not going to be any national outrage over this. In fact, my sister-in-law, Ayanna Rowland Flowers, who she and her sister are nationally known, famous singers, really interesting person who won the BET Amateur Awards years ago. She had the same question and had posted one night on Facebook, why aren't we doing anything regarding protesting about all of the gang violence and black on black crime? Where's Black Lives Matters on these issues? So we had a nice discussion, and my cousin jumped in on the discussion, the Honorable Dion Flowers, retired city councilman, Ward 2 in St. Louis. She works at City Hall still in her retirement, and the Honorable Dion shed some light on this that made me remember a few things myself, because both Ayanna and I were saying, yeah, this is terrible that we don't see any reaction going on over these terrible deaths that are happening, like the record-setting weekend in the city of Chicago over Memorial Day weekend for gang violence, or some of the high-profile black-on-black murders such as David Dorn. So the Honorable Dion Flowers reminded us that there have been programs in place for the past 20 or 30 years from the government-sponsored programs that address black-on-black crime and gang violence. And then that made me remember We've had a history of attention on black crime in just the music industry and the hip hop community since like the late 80s and early 90s. Remember KRS-One and the Stop the Violence campaign? You remember Ice-T and how he used to focus his music on gang violence and stopping gang violence? The majority of all rap and R&B artists were making statements about senseless violence within the black community and how we needed to get our own act together before we address issues about systemic racism. So we do, within the black community, focus on black crime. And my cousin, the Honorable Dion Flowers, did tell me that there are demonstrations and protests, marches, vigils, when incidents happen like David Dorn, the murder of retired police captain David Dorn. So that was very, very interesting to know that. Well, why don't we know about this? Why didn't I know about it? Well, it's because the media doesn't put it out in our face. It's not good money. The media makes more money when it's a white police officer shooting a black person, okay? To be honest, that's good TV. Showing a demonstration of black people demonstrating about David Dorn or doing a memorial or whatever, that's not good TV. White officers killing black people, or the power structure coming up against black people, that's where they make their money. They don't make their money on gang violence, okay? And so plus, considering gang violence, something else I might mention, the gang mentality, the people who join gangs, they go in with an understanding that they're signing up for the risk of being murdered because they're about that life. That's what they say. They're about the gang life, and they know it means that you're going to live a short life and that you're committed to killing or being killed. But the sad result of that is when we see innocent people killed in the crossfire, like the young 3-year-old that was shot when one gangbanger was shooting into the vehicle of another gangbanger. And unfortunately, the child was shot and killed. And then we have many circumstances where stray bullets hitting young people within the inner city community, and someone other than a gangbanger dies. That's very, very sad. But there has been a lot of demonstration over situations like that. Okay, so hopefully that answers question number 1. Let's just move it right along to question number 2. Here we are. Whoops, I'm going the wrong way. Question 2. Why do black people tear up their own neighborhoods in riots and protests? I've had several white friends ask me this in genuine sincerity. Why does this happen? So let's focus on this for a minute. Got to get some coffee to have the energy to get into this one. This is a good one. Well, first of all, I'm going to answer that question with another question. Is this notion entirely true? And the answer to that is no, it's not. It's the media that makes us believe that black people as a whole have a tendency or a propensity to tear up their own neighborhoods and burn their own buildings down in protests. When you see violent protesting and you see tearing up of communities and neighborhoods, one thing that we need to keep in mind is crowds of people don't do this without instigation, okay? It takes one person to spark the fire before these things pop off. And it is human nature. It is not the nature of black people, African Americans, to tear up their own things during violent protest. When one person sparks a violent protest and the contagion mentality hits, the mob mentality hits, the frenzy starts, and we are not operating within our executive functioning minds. Logic and reason goes out the window, and we are ruled by the limbic system, our caveman brain. And that's when we see these frenzies where people are breaking into windows and stealing things as if they're never going to have a chance of buying a TV or getting groceries to eat and survive ever again. So regarding instigation, a lot of these protests and riots that we saw since the George Floyd deal, they were carefully planned and sparked off by people who made sure that they were going to get the biggest bang for their buck once they got the ball rolling. So what do I mean by that? Well, we saw video evidence of carefully and strategically placed brick piles. And then you would have one individual that would throw the first brick and get the crowd starting to tear things up. And I saw a video of a white individual who was talking in the ears of black people, telling them what to do, where the bricks were, where to throw something, where to throw the Molotov cocktail, while he was quite a ways back from the front lines of the protest going on. There's video evidence where we saw white police officers breaking out their own windows in cars. There was a video of dumpster fires being lit on a street where there was no protesting going on, and there was a white person lighting dumpsters on fire. We had the incidents caught on video where the two white women who were dressed in black were spraying BLM on a building, and they were confronted by some black women who were very upset and started yelling at them, telling them to stop doing this because it's the black people that would catch the flack for it and get the blame and be punished for it. And they wanted to be the ones to do that on their own if they were going to catch the blame. So we see in all of this violent protest that, first of all, it was instigated. And then second of all, we don't really know who these instigators are. And third of all, a lot of the violence that was taking place was not just by black people. So, yeah, we had black people tearing up businesses that weren't owned by black people. We also had black people tearing up businesses owned by black people. We also had lots of white people. In some of the videos where I saw, you would see maybe 70 or 80% of the people that were involved in the mayhem were white. But why don't we notice that? Well, it's because of this lens that we have that prevents us of seeing things that we think is possible, but we have this lens that causes us to see what we think that matches our belief system based on the way that we grow up in our life experience. So hopefully that answers that question, that it's not all... It's not just that it's the nature of black people that we tear up our own things. And when you look at protests worldwide, we had violent protests in Northern Iowa, violent protest in Northern Iowa. I don't think there's ever been a protest there. In Northern Ireland, there was rioting, things being blown up. Or, you look what happens when the contagion hits of a mob. World Series, when Boston won their first World Series in the 100-year span that they had during their drought, and you remember where there was people turning over cars, lighting cars on fire, and it definitely was not a black crowd that were committing these things. And so the bottom line is it's contagion, it's mob mentality, and this is human nature. It is not specific to one race. Another thing we need to consider is fake news and media propaganda, okay? It's good TV when we can show things that triggers people's worst fears. What do I mean by that? Well, it's CNN's job to trigger black liberals and white liberals on things that will bring their worst fears to light. So if we can show the white cop shooting a black person, if we can show incidents of racism or show incidents of institutionalized or systemic racism that upsets people, then they're going to get their bang for the buck and ad revenue goes up. How about, so that's CNN or cable news network. I'd like to call them Fable News Network, should be FNN. And then we have Fox News or Faux News. What their purpose is, how they make their money is by scaring all of the conservative white people and triggering their worst fear and triggering their fears of your lifestyle going away and being overtaken and overcome by black people who don't share your social and political beliefs and that you're going to be overrun and taken over, and America will be run over by socialists and Marxists and so on and so forth. So they'll bring news events and evidence that strikes great fear in your heart and upsets you. So each one has an alternate view of reality, and it keeps the audiences glued to the tube. So consider that. If you think black people tear up their own neighborhoods and protests, it's probably because that's what the media wants you to believe. All right, let's move to the final question. Question number 3, which is, if I can get to, I got to flip back over to this view. Question number 3, is there unilateral support of BLM in the black community? Do all black people support BLM? All right, so the short answer, no. Believe it or not, the black community is not a monolith. You would think that 90% of black people share the same beliefs. It's not true. There is a high percentage of black people who would never discuss their beliefs publicly for fear of being ostracized or labeled as a sellout or a token or whatever, or not being down for the cause. The black community is not a monolith. Just as much as there is diversity in the country of different races, even within the race, you have there's a great bandwidth of diversity within the black community. In fact, we can't even agree on what BLM is. Is it an organization? Is there some set of core principles or beliefs that is clear-cut and well-defined? Nope. In fact, there's several versions of BLM out there that we have noticed that the media brings, to our attention. We've got the violent version, of course, the one where we see people spray painting BLM and breaking out windows and throwing Molotov cocktails and rioting and looting and black people tearing up their own neighborhoods. So that's one version. But then we've also got like the Marxist version where we see interviews of so-called BLM officials, which I don't think there's anything really official. And they're stating their beliefs in their Marxist values, and they state that this is the core principles and beliefs, and the motives of BLM is to bring forth and carry out their Marxist beliefs. Then we see like an LGBTQ version where there is a very strong influence by some leaders in the LGBT community, where the focus seems to be on changing the family dynamic, and everything that is being fought for comes from that standpoint, focused on those issues. Then we've got like the your high profile celebrity version where we see the LeBron Jameses and Colin Kaepernick and Ellen DeGeneres, Oprah, a lot of different celebrities from all walks of life and all races. In fact, I have, my own family member who is the celebrity that I won't say the particular name for privacy purposes. But she and her co-workers were doing a peaceful demonstration on national TV where they were speaking out about the incident. I think it was with the Philando Castile deal, where they were saying that they were standing up for senseless acts of violence of the police in their state against black African Americans. Then there's the peaceful version. Right here in Jefferson City, in my town, we had a peaceful demonstration that I would bet you that 75-80% of the people that came to the demonstration were white, okay? And their focus was on raising awareness of the disparity with police interactions in predominantly black communities, and the belief that black lives are not respected as other lives are. So it was really a beautiful thing to see so many people of varying racial backgrounds come together in that peaceful protest. Now, if you take one person from each of these different groups, you've got folks that are diametrically opposed who would argue on what they think BLM stands for and what it is all about, or what measures should be taken and what is the right pathway for carrying out change for what BLM stands for. You have no agreement there. So you definitely don't have unilateral support when we don't know what it really, we can't agree on a clear-cut description of what BLM is all about. So let alone a clear-cut agreement within the entire black community of what we would say that, our belief or what should be supported and what should not be supported. Now, in my opinion, I fall somewhere on this list where I'm fine with stating Black Lives Matter, and I kind of understand that when people say that, they're saying until Black Lives Matter, all lives won't matter. I can understand that. I'm not one to say that violent protesting has its place in affecting change, period. And some people would put me down and be very upset to hear me say that how dare you speak out against violent protests? But that's just my opinion. So even though I support some of what I see in the BLM movement, there are those who would vehemently disagree with me and my opinions. And keep in mind, everything that I've said in answering these questions to my sincere friends who have asked, it's just my opinion. I'm not telling you that if you disagree with me that you're wrong and I'm right. There is no blanket, this is the way all black people should and have to think. And if you want to post your comments about your beliefs and disagree with me, you can. Keep it nice and respectful and know that I would not say or do anything with the purpose and intent of hurting anyone or offending anyone. I say these things out of sincerity, and I respect people for having their beliefs, and I know that everyone has a different belief system, but it's my goal to help people understand that we do have common ground. And if we put in a little bit of effort, we can find those things that we can agree on. And when we do that, we'll establish the groundwork for getting along and making the world a better place, just based on that common ground. All right, well, that's all I've got. Stay tuned because I've got some key interviews with some very interesting people coming up soon. And we'll have some robust discussion. And I won't tell you who these people are, but they're well known within the Jefferson City community. And I think you'll really enjoy some of their insight and hear what they have to say. This is Carlton Flowers, CZTV. You are in the Carlton Zone. Come and visit www.carltonzone.com, and we'll see you next time. Peace.